I'm Flores. I'm a historian and a professor at Bowdoin College, and my book is titled Fields of Division: Latino Struggles for Rights in Agricultural California. I think Monterey County is struggling with two different histories. One in which this is a region of tremendous growth, tremendous economic progress and profit when it comes to agribusiness, and also this history of being a place that's welcomed a diversity of people, from the original European immigrants to this county, to Okies who migrated here during the Dust Bowl era, to the Braceros who migrated at mid-century, and to the very diverse groups of Latino immigrants who are still moving here and making this county their home. I think that that history has to be balanced against another history, one that's a little bit darker, one that's a little bit harder to talk about, which is the way in which this region has witnessed a lot of disturbing trends in labor and immigration policy that we see repeating themselves in the present moment. So the ways in which Congress is trying to bring back a guest worker program from Mexico echoes the Bracero program in many fashions. There's this desire to resurrect a program in which cheap labor is brought into this country only to be sent back when it's no longer desired or needed. I think that immigration policy that has within that legislation extreme monitoring of one's immigrant status in this country is very reminiscent of immigration policies that the INS and the US government created in the 1950s. Operation Wetback, for instance, was an immigration initiative during the 1950s that racially profiled anyone who looked Mexican or looked like they could be undocumented in this country. And we're seeing that today with legislation like Arizona's SB 1070, like the immigration initiatives that have been passed in states like Alabama and Georgia. This is only indicative of the ways in which history tends to repeat itself if no one brings up the desire to change fundamental problems within our nation's economy and within the ways that we treat our workers who work in our fields today. I think states in the Deep South are the ones who are witnessing this first influx of Latino immigrants into their regions. And I think this is creating a lot of tensions that are nothing new to what this country has experienced. There has always been an issue of equality within the agricultural sector when it comes to workers' rights. I think that we still have much to do in terms of unionizing workers, of organizing them in ways that protect their ability to work in this country without having to be tied to an exploitative employer. I think that the protections are not there yet in agribusiness, but they need to be, because this is a sector of our economy that is attracting a lot of immigrants from Central and Latin America, and these people are often the most vulnerable residents of this nation because of their immigrant status and also because of the ways in which they have to live their lives. They have to live their lives in the shadows with substandard wages, and the ways in which we view them as outsiders or not often impacts the ways in which social relations generate themselves and create either conflict or cooperation between different groups of people. The lives of people who are working in our fields today in places like Monterey County or in other regions across the United States, their lives do not look much different from what they looked like in the early part of the 20th century. If one is undocumented, one has to live in constant fear of being detected in the United States, of being punished for just basically coming over the border to work, to try to provide for their families. The US government and US agriculture is basically encouraging people to come work for higher wages with a multitude of jobs available to them, yet they are targeted in this country for merely doing what they are forced to do by poverty in Mexico, but also by opportunity in the United States. the lives of individuals who have to live in these kinds of shadows. It's incredibly traumatizing, not only for them, but also for their family members and children in the United States. I think that labor and immigration policy in this country pulls families apart, often divides them not only physically in terms of deportation, possible apprehension and arrest, but also in very emotional ways. Children are having to deal with this having to deal with this problem now, and we see this happening with the DREAM Act, for instance. Children who are coming of age and want to go to college, if their status is one of being undocumented in this country, there's limitations put on their lives that have a very real impact on their futures. And the requirements that we place upon these people to live in fear, to live under the radar, to live in the shadows, is one that does not reward the hard work that they've contributed to this country. And this is a problem that is going to have to work at multiple levels with multiple groups of people coming to a consensus on how to not create the same second-class citizens that were created during the time of the Bracero program and during the time of agribusiness's height in this country at the mid-20th century. History is going to repeat itself unless we see tremendous change. But I think that there are inspiring moments happening now among immigrants, among US-born Latinos and their allies. Immigrant rights is a huge issue in this country right now, and we're at a really important moment, a very important cusp where we can decide to recognize the contributions of so many people who have contributed in so many ways to our economy and to our society. We have the opportunity to change the flaws that we see in history. I think one moment of inspiration or one positive trend that I see happening in Monterey County is actually predicated upon the participation in the political arena of this ex-bracero, ex-farm worker population. I think that those who have naturalized as citizens in the US have now formed this coalition of people who are still agitating for farm worker rights in this county and across the US. I think the people who have actually experienced what it was to be so exploited in the US back earlier in the century are now inspiring their children, are inspiring labor union leaders, and are inspiring civil rights activists to remember their experiences from many decades ago and translate that into action in the present day. I think that they are who is moving this force to participate politically in this region. They're a really big part of what's mobilizing the Latino demographic in Monterey County, is the recognition that they had to experience so many negative conditions, so many negative emotions and traumas in their past labor experiences, that this is now inspiring other people who feel like they can change this for the future.